All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for real people just like you right there and just like me right here. Steve Miller's big, bold, beautiful takedown of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame lives in my memory banks as one of the best things I've ever seen. Now, if you haven't seen this, you can watch the entire clip, or you can watch what leads up to the clip and so forth. This was reported here by Artisan News, who apparently decided to pick this up because it was fairly dramatic and very on point. Steve Miller, though, is actually, he's complaining about the fact that his family was so poorly treated. Let's listen to some of this because, again, this is very satisfying to me because I really don't like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So let's listen to Steve for a little bit.
The whole process needs to be changed from the top to the bottom. Doesn't need to be this hard. There's nothing fancy going on out there that requires all of this stuff. They need to get their legal work straight. They need to respect the artists they say they're honoring, which they don't. I don't have any of my paperwork is signed. I have no licensing agreements with these people. They're trying to steal footage. They're trying to make me indemnify them. When they told me I was inducted, they said you can have 2 tickets, one for your wife and one for yourself. Want another one? It's $10,000. Sorry, that's the way it goes. They said, I'm playing here. What about my band? What about their wives? What about... They make this so unpleasant that they came this close. No, we're not going to wrap this one up. I'm going to wrap you up. You go sit down over there and learn something. So here's what you need to know. This is how close this whole show came to not happening because of the way the artists were actually being treated right now. So I'll wrap it up right now.
So, not only does the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame have an induction problem, kind of sounds like something a chicken would have to go through. Mr. Chicken, you have an induction problem. It's just mind-blowing here that not only do they not actually put people in the Hall of Fame that deserve to be in there, but then you're Steve Miller and you can't get tickets for your band. You can't get tickets for the band and their wives and so forth. I mean, this is just crazy, out of control stuff. And I think this was really very illustrative in several ways about how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame operates. And people should care about this. This year, because of the whole case-demic, we can't have a real Hall of Fame. We're going to have a virtual Hall of Fame. There was one artist, maybe 2, that I thought were worthy of the Hall of Fame. The Doobie Brothers, definitely, and maybe Whitney Houston. I don't know how rock and roll Whitney Houston is, but her impact on music, I think, sent ripples out, and her vocals were just so good that, yeah, okay, I'll buy into that. But then, if you look at the rest of the list, I mean, Depeche Mode, I like them, but Hall of Fame material? Nah, not so much. So, in any event, I just wanted to revisit this. I was feeling a little weird today, and I remembered Steve Miller chewing out the Hall of Fame, and one of my favorite moments. By the way, Steve Miller basically was classic rock radio when the format was invented. He was the bread and butter of classic rock radio. Again, a guy who had top 40 hits, album rock hits, and that greatest hits collection, the 74 through 78 greatest hits collection, one of the best start to finish listening experiences of any greatest hits album, except later on, they made a longer version of it with some of the 80s material like Abracadabra, and there are other tracks from the mid-80s, I Want to Make the World Turn Around, which are just incredible Steve Miller tracks. But here's a guy who had been at this since, the mid to late 1960s, was kind of part of that Woodstock generation. Yes, heavy emphasis on the blues. And by the way, there's a lot of material that Steve recorded prior to that 74 to 78 span, which is very good, from the early 1970s. And again, this is why he's in the Hall of Fame, but not a great experience for Steve. And for many of us, it just continues every year. It's a lousy experience and it needs to change. Or my idea would be just to make a new institution. Call it the new and improved Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or the real Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or the Rock Music Hall of Fame. Some kind of a sort of spin on this, or where you're not plagiarizing, but you're still doing what this does. But because this has been around for a while now, this is supposedly the only game in town, I would start over from scratch. I'd do something else, because artists deserve to be in this. You know, bands like Foreigner, they're not in the Hall of Fame. Blue Oyster Cult, Steppenwolf, Jim Croce, Carly Simon, Pat Benatar. It's a long list, and you can send me your list if you want to. If you're a patron, send me your list of should-be Hall of Famers, and I will. I'll give you a shout out in my next video.